This is Comic Book Variant, Episode 2, A Splash on the Flash.
Run as fast as you can. You can't catch me, I'm the Rocket Man. Run as fast as you can. Come on, baby, catch me if you can.
My name is Chase Lee. I'm your host.
I'm Kaleb Owens.
I'm Courtney Murphy.
I'm Charlie Willis.
I'm Neal Bonham.
I'm Clay Achee.
Grace Emden. And that's Katie Crawford.
Katie Crawford will be voiced by the character of Grace Emden.
I'll do my best.
Are you Hufflepuffing right now?
Hufflepuff all over myself. Okay, we're good. I'm Katie Crawford, if that helps.
Okay. This episode is specifically about The Flash. More specifically, The Flash in the Golden Age. For those of you who don't know, a splash page in a comic is the big, full-page, highlighted, it's like big page for a big moment. So it's sort of the focus on the character, so we're calling it a splash on blank character.
I didn't know that. Thanks for telling me.
That's why you're
Although
here.
it's really going to work best for the Flash for the rhyming element.
Right.
So good luck with that.
Well,
in
we
the
have
future.
Splash for the Flash Gordon. It's kind of...
Splash for
Flash Man
Aquaman.
for the Super.
Oh, Splash for... Nice.
Flash for the Reverse Flash.
It's also, we're doing it because it's his 75th anniversary this year. So we thought, and with the and with the popularity of the TV show and all that, we figured we'd try to swing on those coattails.
The last 75 years went quick.
Was that
Who's based on the Silver Age Flash?
who's based on the
TV show?
Oh, the Silver. Yes, is based on the Silver Age. We'll get there. Yeah, we're gonna slog through the Golden Age. I like Jay Garrick. He's but some of the comics are kind of hard to read.
I like this guy.
But before we get to that, we have a little bit of business to take care of. So this episode is sponsored by...
Just like
I was trying to
completely
give you so
clueless.
much
Oh my
time.
god, the key words.
Yeah.
Just like,
This episode is sponsored by Complete Media Group, your one-stop shop for photography, videography, DJ, photo, booth. Sorry. So you divided the word photo booth
I didn't
onto
type
different
this.
lines? I'm just saying. So, videography and lighting services, everything your special event needs.
Clay is our
It's
professional
super
radio.
I got behind a speaker.
Yeah. No. I spend 4 hours a day doing radio in that voice, or one more excited version of that voice. Oh my God, you're listening to DJ Clay, blah, 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 blah.
that Clay.
And I still hear myself and go, that guy is so obnoxious.
But you still listen to
Just
yourself.
met
Like
a
all the time.
of you.
Okay, so I did bring some reference material of certain things that y'all can flip through as at your leisure. Yes, I know it's a book. I don't know.
It's so much, Chase. There are more pages of research on the Flash than there are Flash comics.
That is so not true. Especially about the Flash. He's
Found the outline.
like fourth only to Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman in comic
The
appearance.
top
No
three are the only ones
joke.
that beat him. It's
Yeah.
insane.
Okay, so if there's anything y'all
read my book.
want to say before we start? Okay, well then let's.
Glad to be here. Thanks for buying beer.
Yeah, absolutely. That's our sponsor.
Well, there is one thing I wanted to say. We are sponsored by Complete Audio.
You didn't even get the name right.
That's it.
Just complete audio.
We are
The
completely
delicious cold
sponsored.
beer that we're enjoying is sponsored by Complete Media Group. I'm done.
Hey, said
done.
beer.
It was
Not
a
too bad
one-shotter.
out the can.
Right.
Not too
Okay.
bad. Not too bad out the can.
So we're going to be
The
talking
Flash.
about the Flash in the Golden Age, which is Jay Garrick. The Flash that most people are familiar with is probably either Barry Allen or Wally West. The current TV show is Barry Allen, but the Justice League cartoon that we grew up on was Wally West, and that was actually my first experience seeing the Flash was the Justice League cartoon. So Wally West was my first Flash.
Is he the third one?
He's the
bronze-aged one?
red-haired one.
Yes, he's the third one.
Yeah, he's the third, right? Yeah.
Yes,
and then
he's the
Bart,
Bart is the fourth.
fourth, and then there's another one too, right?
No, there's
I think there's only 4.
So is this like a Green Lantern thing? Like, why are there so many multiple?
Or is it
Well,
like a James
actually-
Bond thing where one of them keeps dying?
That's
That's
same
kind
thing?
of, Yeah.
Actually, that's
Not to skip ahead with that question, but
no. That's there kind of is answered more in the Silver Age, but the general thing is that Jay Garrick was the first Flash, and then the Silver Age Flash, Barry Allen, was a Flash comic book fan. Like, he read comic books of the Flash as a kid and was inspired by it, and that's when he got the speeding powers. He was inspired by that Flash, so he took up the mantle. And then in Flash 123, Flash of Two Worlds, Flash vibrated into Jay Garrick's actual dimension, and they fought crime together in Keystone City. But that's something we'll talk about more on the next episode of Comic Book Variant. Anything else before we dive into the outline here?
Give me the origin story, baby. I need it.
Yeah, let's go.
Well, I'm going to tease you a little bit while longer.
Tease me.
because It's not.
Yeah.
This is. I'm going to give you the creation story, which is a little different.
Oh.
In the beginning.
The universe was initially in a very hot and
was
dense.
slow.
Amen.
Okay, so the Flash first appeared in Flash Comics #1, which is cover dated January 1940. That was from All American Publications, which is one of 3 companies which eventually became DC Comics. The other 2 being somebody help me out here. So it's Detective, and then what was the third one?
National.
National. Okay, yeah, National.
It's pre-World War II.
Yes, pre-World War II. Our
For America, pre-World War
America,
II.
yeah, right.
Some other countries that don't matter were embroiled in some skirmish.
Was it really a world war before we got
until
involved?
America gets
Well,
involved?
until
No.
America entered, it was Third World War II.
No. There's way too many numbers in that.
You just called Italy, France, and England the third world. Ballsy, sir. Ballsy.
Yeah, I don't think we have any listeners in those countries. I think we're fine. It was created by writer Gardner Fox and artist Harry Lampert. Although Harry was only on the comic for, I think, the first 2 issues, and then we get a whole new artist who sort of establishes the look of Jay Garrick that most people who know him are familiar with. The Gardner Fox was probably the most productive writer of the Golden Age in comics. He created several characters: the Flash, Hawkman, who was also in Flash Comics #1, Dr. Fate.
Sandman.
Yes, Sandman was one of them. You don't have to be shy; it won't bite you. Yeah, Charlie, you're.
You can be shy.
One of your favorite kids,
Zatanna.
Zatanna. Yeah. So yeah, tons of characters that we'll touch on and talk about as we go through this.
Yeah.
He also wrote the Justice Society of America, which was the first superhero team comic. He scripted an unbroken run of 65 issues of Justice League of America. 65 issues. That is, you're lucky if you get an artist team to stay on for 6. Like an artist-writer team stay on for 6. This I thought was cool. So Fox worked on Detective Comics #33 with Bill Finger and Bob Kane to present the first appearance of Thomas and Martha Wayne. So essentially, he came up with Bruce's parents and their death. Like, that was not something that was in the comics before he came onto it.
That's a fairly popular part
Yeah.
of the mythology now.
Yeah, huge.
Yeah, like they can't stop making TV shows and movies where they cover that particular portion of his life. The whole 9 yards.
Gardner Fox wrote under a lot of pseudonyms, so people don't credit him. I mean, he's essentially the Golden Age Stan Lee, but he wrote under a bunch of pseudonyms because writing comic books back then was, you were actually trying to get to be a newspaper writer, but you wrote comic books because it was like tending bar, being a waiter, that sort of thing, just like a job you were doing until you got a real job. Stan Lee is famous for saying that people would come up to him in parties and say, "What do you do?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm a writer," and he'd walk away. And they'd come back and they're like, "Well, what do you write?" "Magazines," and he'd walk away. And then they'd come out and say, "What type of magazines?" "Comics," and then they'd walk away. Fox wrote under a bunch of different pseudonyms: Jefferson Cooper, Bart Summers, Linda Cooper, Rod Gray, Robert Starr. I thought this was kind of cool. He wrote under, one time, Don, Ed, Warner, and Michael Blake Like he just put all of them. Just was like, this has 4 writers on this one because I'm proud of myself on it. I don't know.
Multiple personalities.
Right? Yeah.
It would take 4 men to do what I just did. Like, all right, guy.
Okay, so I guess that's probably covers it for Gardner Fox. We can jump into Jay Garrick as a Gay Jarek. That's a very different character.
Yeah.
That is the Flash
Chase,
in a
why
very
did you-
different parallel universe.
Right. Yeah.
Pink get
Flash
up.
dance.
Yeah, the pink kryptonite where Superman is very interested in Jimmy and not Lois. That's actually a comic book,
That's
by the
a
way. That's
thing?
actually a thing that happened. There was one time
my
pink kryptonite.
God.
Yeah, but we're not talking about Superman.
Why'd you?
Okay, so Jay Garrick, he was actually Caleb. Do you want to take this one? And
I
kind
mean, I
of
think you're doing a good job. I like the sound of your voice, you know. I like to kind of chime in, you know.
okay, all right. So Jay Garrick was a science student at Midwestern University in 1940. That was later retconned to be 1938. During a smoke break, which I thought this was interesting, they actually have a panel of him
Yeah.
smoking in a 1940 comic.
I was wondering about
In a
that.
kid's
Can we
comic.
get away
Who-
with that now?
No,
Like,
Oh
the
my
answer is
God.
no.
No.
Only villains. Here's the smoking rules, right? Villains or people who lived in the past are allowed to smoke. No one else is allowed
like
to
the
smoke.
smoking man from the X Files.
Yeah.
But you know, Chase, it's funny because it said you said smoke break, but from what I remember, I think he actually just like turned his chair around and he was like leaning
This-
on the chemicals.
Yeah, no,
Right,
he
right,
didn't
right.
leave the chemical
No, he smoked
laboratory
inside.
to smoke.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was particularly funny as well because he's the athletic superhero. He's the fastest man in the world, you know, and so it's like having a track star be like
But
a
he was
2-pack a day
And that
kind
was
of
the
guy.
thing.
yeah.
Well, that
Can't
I,
be smoking.
and I don't know who had a chance to actually read the Flash Comics #1 that I put on the Google Drive. And he's actually not. He's on a college football team, but he's not a good
they
athlete.
actually-
Like I don't.
They call him a scrub.
Yeah.
He's a scrub. They call him that twice. I think.
no,
Oh,
because
no, like,
Football
that's an
tennis
insult from the 40s.
yeah.
Don't be calling me no scrub.
It's literally
Football
washwoman.
and tennis.
He's a washwoman.
Didn't TLC sing about scrubs
gonna
or
start
something?
calling
Yeah.
and how they
He's
didn't want
basically
any.
like a towel boy.
They wanted
essentially.
no.
Yeah, it's
Well,
how
he
it
does.
was.
He is
No.
on the team,
So he's-
which
yeah.
comes.
He's
but
on
comes-
the team.
But he's
He's riding
like the
the bench.
last one on
He
the bench.
doesn't
He
play
actually
the team.
he makes a comment that he would only get on the field if every other person on the team got hurt.
Correct.
So
Unfortunate time to go.
so anyway, during
Wow, I am alone.
Go
I have to do
team.
this myself.
you versus 11. There are 11 people on the field.
What is
on
this
one
ball
side
foot?
Of it.
And how do it work?
It's just called soccer. It's fine. So as he's smoking, he turns around. Thank you, Charlie. And then leans back on the desk and knocks over one of the chemicals that is apparently, and I quote, hard water gas.
I did want to ask what
So
that
heavy
was.
water.
Okay.
Well, no, later.
Well, hard water to me reminds me of the term heavy water, which has to do with nuclear hydrogen bombs specifically, correct? Am I wrong?
I don't.
Way to know
No,
science.
Way to
That's
know that. I
one
did-
way-
You're asking
Okay.
if you
My
correct
only-
the table of people that don't know.
Yeah, right.
So you could say,
My-
I'm
Let me
correct.
use
My
the oracle
argument
to
with
find
that,
this out.
my only argument with that is it being 1940.
Yeah.
1940
Well-
was pre
Hydrogen bomb.
public knowledge of higher. It was
Yeah.
pre-nuclear knowledge. They were testing this stuff, but it
Knowledge.
wasn't yet
Well,
been dropped.
I have somewhat of answer for both of you on
Great.
this. Hard water
Is
is
really
it's specific.
difficult to clean from toilet rings. But go on.
That's the issue.
Right, yeah.
That's what I'm here for, you
Well,
guys.
apparently, if you inhaled those toilet rings, you could run really fast.
I've got to try this.
Hey, don't clean anymore.
Only if you live in Alabama does this work.
Two major things. First off, is hard water specifically, although later on in the comics they change it to heavy water because heavy water became a thing. I think hard water was either something they just made up or
You can't read that. Hard water is water that has a high mineral content.
Yeah.
hard water is water that had a high mineral content, as Sean, our mixer.
Here we have more salt.
soft water.
Soft
We
water.
do.
Okay.
That's why your
I don't-
hair feels
Bubbles.
better here.
I'm
than
not
when you
really
shower
sure. I'm
on
not really sure if
vacation.
that was the same type of hard water they're
No,
talking
I can't
about.
imagine that that's what they were
Right.
talking about.
Because it's specifically hard water gas too.
Is it like fracking, or you like your water
I
lights
took
on
it.
fire?
I took it as if
Fracking
you didn't really
beauty.
know what it
Fracking was a new
was. That it
sex
was just
position.
like this chemical that he was working with. But didn't they come out with like an element name for it later on? Like I felt like there was in one of the series later on they came out with an actual element name that was supposed to be for hard water.
Flashtonian.
I don't know. We'll have to
I
look.
wrote it down.
There you go. At first, I thought it was ice. I was just like, isn't that just like ice and then it's a gas?
Chase, it's
yeah.
uranium 235
Okay, and that's hard water or heavy water?
for hard water.
Well, no, that's what they started calling it.
But it's called
Right,
heavy water later.
Well,
No.
well, I don't. Maybe
It's the
yes.
same thing,
It's the
though,
same.
right?
It was all the
Yeah.
same thing. I'm just saying they later on they mentioned that in the comics. Like, we'll get to that.
Right. Yeah, we'll get to that. That's I think in probably the next either Silver or Bronze Age. But also they later retcon it to be that the hard water just activated a latent metagene that was already in Jay Garrick, so it wouldn't give super flash powers to everybody, just him. Like
Just
people couldn't recreate the thing. The fumes from the hard water gas caused Jay to develop tremendous speed, enabling him to move and think at superhuman rates. It was reintroduced in the 1960s, slightly modified, saying it was heavy water instead of hard water, which I guess is probably a reference, since it's now the 60s, the society is aware more of the nuclear cost of things.
Well, as a science note, according to Wikipedia, if you don't mind, according to, I'm going to butcher this gentleman's name, I apologize, science community, George de Havasi, he used heavy water in 1934 in one of the first biological tracer experiments to estimate the rate of turnover of water in the human body, which might have something to do with possibly
Like his metabolism or something almost?
maybe when he inhaled said liquid, maybe it's kind of the effect, the metagene or whatever. It could have some basis of science, comic books.
Interesting.
Yeah,
basis.
science.
Yeah, go science. Now, thank God they didn't come up with the Flash in the 80s. It was just called it cocaine.
Right, yeah. If they came
He
up
was
with it now, it
smoking
would be
and he
Adderall.
did a
Yeah,
lot.
right.
So he was the first hero to have just a singular power, which was speed, which he utilized in several different ways. His signature look was his winged hat. It's a hat that is his father's hat from World War I. Yes, Clay, you want to say something?
No, sorry. This is the only thing I have important to add to this. The World War I hat, it belonged to his father, and we're in a post-World War I country, but a pre-World War II country, and that the whole costume is based off of Hermes and Mercury. So Hermes in Greek mythology and Mercury in
The messenger of the gods.
Roman mythology, who was really fast because
Right.
he was the messenger of the gods. I like that. I even as a kid remember thinking that Greek and Roman mythology was a gold mine of inspiration for this sort of stuff that was
Right.
not dug into enough.
Absolutely.
But yeah, Flash, right out of that.
So he moves to New York to become an assistant professor at Coleman University, which was not a real university at the time, but now is. So
Does art inspire life or life inspire art?
Right. Now, so when he comes out, like most superheroes at the time, he mostly battled gangsters, and it wasn't hard. He always just won really easily. There was never like will he or won't he sort of thing. It was like, he will, which I think kind of speaks to the zeitgeist, the social concept of the time, especially with Americans, was that like we can beat this.
An
like,
invincibility complex.
Right.
There's,
exactly.
there's never a question. Not even will he or won't he win. It's will he or won't he be wrong. You know, that's not
Yeah.
even a possibility at this
Right,
point
yeah.
of just we're right and we win and
And this
that's
is
the book.
still pre-World War II.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
they're coming off the coattails of World War I of winning.
Oh no!
Well, no,
coming
but
up-
we're far enough away from World War I at this point. See, and we'll talk about this a
the
little
next
once we
generation.
get past World War II, but there's this dip in fantasy across the board. Books, movies, comic books. But there's always a dip in fantasy after some horrendous war. And so, like, we're actually at that point where we're really willing to accept a large amount of fantasy because we're right before the horrendous event as opposed to right after it. The mobster thing as well is a really good example in that mobsters were very popular in the 40s, even in film, and it's partially because they were bad guys. There were
There's no. It's black and white.
Right.
As
You
opposed
can have a hero that's a really good guy and villains that are really bad guys, and you never have to mingle in sort of the gray morality, which is actually funny because the whole film noir thing that deals a lot with gangsters came out of after World War II, and we first got our very complex dark heroes sort of in that realm.
Our Humphrey Bogart.
Yeah, our
kind of-
Humphrey
World War
Bogart
II
types.
and avant-garde.
Right. You know, so they were starting to experiment with that stuff, but they loved the mobster because the mobster was just a bad guy.
Yeah.
Right. So speaking of those mobsters, there were 3 inept mobsters that started out as being bad guys, villains, whatever you want to say, and eventually became sort of Flash's sidekicks. Winky, Blinky, and Nod.
No, those are Pac-Man ghosts.
I thought they were rabbits. Peter rabbits. Things.
They're
Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail.
So yeah, Winky, Blinky, and
He
Nod
ends up getting sidekicks.
are essentially Three Stooges ripoffs, like really bad Three Stooges ripoffs.
Larry, Curly, and Moe.
Yeah, and they look just like.
Yeah, if you Google what they look like,
Wait.
Yeah.
it's pretty eerie, the resemblance.
is an old Irish folktale.
Yeah, and it's they just dropped the in.
Winkin'?
It's not Winkin', it's Winky and Blinky. But yeah, it is very much a rip off of that Irish. I've always felt like the Flash was Irish. I don't know why. Is Garrick Irish name?
I don't know. Garrick could be an Irish name. The new redheaded one kind of helps that theory.
Wally.
Gingers,
yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Ginger.
those people.
Soulless people.
Something else about J. Garrick. He was one of the founding members of the Justice Society of America and was their first chairman. So he was essentially the first leader of the Justice Society. The Flash was a popular character in the 1940s. He was supporting both Flash Comics and All Flash Quarterly, and also co-starred in Comics Cavalcade and the Justice Society of America, which had their own adventures in All-Star Comics. He was predominantly featured more than pretty much any other character in the Golden Age, maybe even more at the time than Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, because he had essentially, I think he was in 5 different stories a lot.
Yeah.
So, but with superhero post-war decline, which Clay kind of talked about, Flash Comics was canceled after 104 issues in 1949. The last issue featured an evil version of the Flash called the Rival, which we'll get to later on. The Justice Society's final Golden Age story was All-Star Comics 57, which ended in 1951, and that it became All-Star Western, I believe. Yeah, go ahead.
No, sorry. Just and I have
Clay,
another
go ahead.
point about the post-war problem with fantasy, and it's a good example. So think about the villains that you're using being like mobster types, and then you go through World War II where you have a person, a political party, and a country actually trying to exterminate whole groups of people whose specific goal was actually to literally take over the whole world. And start thinking about the sort of villains that you can then get after that. So once a society starts recovering from that, you can get into Lex Luthor's, you can get into you can get into the type of villain that's actually trying to run the whole world, and that's a believable, conceivable concept.
Right.
But unfortunately, you always
Before
have,
that, it was
you
just
always
like
have this
neighborhoods.
stuff. Yeah, if it's like the local mob who's trying to swindle money, you know, it all of a sudden post-war, that's going to look really corny.
Right.
Which is why these things sort of collapse during those times.
Right. Oh, that's interesting.
The world got a little bit bigger.
The world got a little bit bigger,
I did find out what Garrick means. If
All
you're
right.
curious,
Yeah.
because I think it actually is pertinent. It's actually Old English, but it means one who governs with a spear, or a spear king.
Interesting.
Interesting.
Aquaman?
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Donatello? No.
His nicknames include the Scarlet Speedster, the Crimson Comet, and the Blur. Which I thought was interesting. Anybody who's watched Smallville, they call him the Blur. And I don't know if they just came up with that independently or that was like a throwback.
Huge question.
That was probably a throwback.
Throwback. Oh, some of the other characters that Gardner Fox created, just thought was kind of cool. Adam Strange, Dr. Light, Spectre, Starro, and you said Zatanna. And Barbara Gordon. He created Barbara Gordon. Not as Batgirl, I don't think. I think she was Barbara Gordon in the comics beforehand, and then later on down the line, she became Batgirl at a Halloween party or something. I put this little picture of the Flash on this next page to sort of emphasize how similar he looks to Hermes / Mercury. So, yeah, they just straight up use it.
Those are some nice listeners.
I'm sure people at home could have looked up a picture of both
Dude,
of these things.
Just because you know how to use Google doesn't mean everybody does,
A
okay?
lot of people don't actually.
Big head.
How did you get to
Okay,
here if
so-
you don't know how to Google it?
Quicksilver was actually it was inspired by the Flash, and
Did
then
not know that. That's
yeah,
pretty cool.
Quality Comics. The first Quicksilver you'll see, that's Quality Comics Quicksilver, which came out right after the Flash did. It was essentially like a complete ripoff. They just were like, oh, we'll make a blue guy who's fast. And then whenever Quality Comics let the rights lapse for the name Quicksilver, Marvel just went, okay, and then essentially just decided they would rip it off. What? So Quicksilver now is like a ripoff of a ripoff.
Making a statement. Huh. That's interesting.
That is really interesting.
Yeah.
All right, so I guess, does anybody have any like other questions or comments before we actually dive into the issues? Yes, Charlie.
For me, yes. I had a question about this iteration of the Flash. I don't know if there was like an actual link between Hermes and himself, or if it was just like he was wearing a lot of those clothes and stuff like that. I don't know if he was like blessed with anything specifically by Hermes. I know that Wonder Woman has become
I think
Right.
the god of war and things like that. I didn't know if that was like. in
Well,
Golden Age
Was it
also.
just an inspired by scenario, or was that part of the storyline?
this-
Nope,
Yeah.
just the chain smoking scientist.
in this
drinking hard water.
in this iteration, no, it was just visually inspired by the Greek god who was fast.
Okay.
But in the current New 52, he is now granted the power of speed from Hermes, or it's either Hermes or Mercury.
I think it was a dying god.
Same god, different
right,
culture.
Right, exactly. Romans just took over
Yeah,
the Greeks and
quote,
were like, "We'll
different
keep your
culture,
gods, but
yeah.
rename them." But yeah, I
Thanks,
think it's
Romans.
a brother of Wonder Woman, half brother, something like that. I'm looking at
I
the.
thought you have it. Don't you?
Do I?
I thought it
I have so much note.
Hermes or Flash being.
Hermes,
Oh.
or is it Hermes or
I don't
Mercury?
even know.
I guess it's Hermes because it's the Greek.
Yeah,
Wonder
yeah,
Woman's
Hermes
the
is Greek.
Greek.
Yeah, Greek right.
Okay.
It's not after planets, it's Greek.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. So that's actually kind of a point of contention with current
Yeah.
Flash fans that they've changed it that much. But I feel like it makes more sense with the current continuity since they are sort of going with the Greek gods and
Yeah.
Apollo and Ares are so involved with current storylines. It just seems like it makes sense.
Easier to sell.
Right. Yeah. Than hard or heavy water. Plus, they're probably trying to get away from all drug-induced superpowers these days.
Really? I was hitting that hard water this morning.
Yeah, it does. It definitely feels like.
Ooh.
Oh, go ahead. You go ahead.
Feels like they're moving more towards fantasy than sci-fi. A lot
interesting.
is what I'm feeling from all these backstories and things like that. Is they're moving towards the fantastic element of it's aliens or it's gods or
Greek
it's just straight up
mythology and
freaking
gods.
magic, like
Right.
rather than like it's science that we can't explain, because I feel like there's a difference in the science they can't explain in the 40s than the science that we can explain now, and just being like it was hard water. Everybody's like, what does that mean? And they're
Right.
like, I don't
It
know, we just
starts
said
getting
water and
questionable.
hard and we put it together. And now
Right,
it's
yeah.
this, but it actually has a meaning now, and so
Right.
it's a lot more difficult.
But the comics in the
Yeah.
40s were such light fluff. Not insulting them, but they were writing it like we were talking about earlier. The writers wouldn't even admit that they were comic book writers, and that now they understand that these things are going to last for decades. And so that's where you get into trouble with sci-fi, because eventually science catches up with science fiction, and then you're screwed because you're like, I have all of the knowledge of the known universe in this computer that inhabits a room. And then you're like, no, I actually have that in my pocket right now. Right. And so it becomes problematic. But once you get into the world of fantasy, it's much harder to outdate that.
Yeah.
And it is Mercury that was dying that gave
Is
him his
Mercury?
powers.
Okay, so that was
Roman.
Roman. Okay, well, I guess we can go ahead and dive into
Yeah, I want to talk about this first episode because, first, I guess, issue.
Yeah.
Did anyone else who read it, did anyone else think that the first time he met Joan that she was kind of a bitch?
Oh my God! Yes, very shallow.
I was like, this bitch needs to step off. Like,
Right.
I did not like her.
Like, yeah, he comes up and says,
Shove
"Hi,
some
Joan."
hard water down her throat.
And, no, she says something akin to that, like, well, if you were good on the football team.
Yeah.
Although I guess technically she says if you applied yourself. So that was kind of her saving grace, as it were. That she. It wasn't that he wasn't good at sports, and that's why she didn't like him. It was that he didn't apply himself in
It could be that he was lackadaisical and smoked cigarettes.
Right,
Around
yeah, he
chemicals,
was-
possibly.
Everybody smokes cigarettes around chemicals. Come on, bro.
Maybe.
Wait, you know what? You do bring up a good point. He's playing high school football, smoking in the chemistry lab.
college football.
It was college,
He's
okay.
playing college football. He's on the college football.
Hey, that wasn't nearly big of a
He
deal
was
in
a
the
big
40s.
rub. I
40s.
figured it was.
But she also totally left him for the captain of the football team, and then he was like, "I'm winning football again." She's like, "Oh, okay."
What was the captain?
It totally
what was
just
the
came back to
captain
him.
of
You're
the
just
football
like,
team name?
Oh, I
Like
don't
something
know.
Really, it was like really bad. I'll have to.
If somebody
Our
wants to,
statistician here.
right? If somebody wants to look up the comic,
Yeah, but no, but put it this way: what better way to set up a character who's eventually going to be like the fastest man alive and a real go-getter than to set him up as somebody who is
Disliked.
Right.
yeah,
Down
lackadaisical.
upon,
Yeah, lackadaisical, or somebody who's not really applying himself. Then give him a bunch of superpowers. You know, it actually gives him an extra dimension
One
that way.
extreme to the other.
Yeah.
It's showing the
Yeah,
extreme
the dichotomy.
so I guess we can dive into the actual issues now. Okay. So Flash Comics #1, despite its title, was not even close to a solo title for Flash. It was essentially every issue gave equal prominence to Hawkman as well, so it could have just as easily been called Hawkman Comics. Also, the covers were just as likely to promote Hawkman as they were Flash, and actually, even in the early covers, they had other people like Johnny Thunder. I don't know. I'm trying to remember.
Johnny
It was-
Thunder. I feel
Johnny
like I
Thunder.
bought his first 2 albums.
It was. It was someone called the Whip.
The Whip.
It was the Whip.
You
And
can
they would-
say
You
things,
can do
Katie.
that.
You can say
I
words.
struggle with words
It's-
and social interaction.
I struggle with people.
We all do. That's why we talk about comics.
That's why
But
this is
y'all
a
at least
podcast and not a
interact.
TV
I'm
show.
just awkward and
People can
uncomfortable
choose
with
to-
no like hobbies or anything.
You're our Raven.
That's
That's
so true.
You
I
can
love you
cast
guys.
magic. What?
yeah.
My superpower is
she's
empathy and
actually half
extreme
demon.
like angry eyes. Resting bitch face is my superpower.
See, well, I call it.
Inflicting
It's not. It's not
terror.
resting bitch face. So my wife suffers from that, and I call it. It's just the default face. It's the one thing I can say to her that she doesn't punch me about. if I called her, if I said she had a resting bitch face constantly, I would get punched. It's a default face.
That's fair.
She was born with it.
It's assuming that it's a
It's not
bitch face.
Maybelline.
It's just a default face. That makes sense.
and back off the
I would
rails.
appreciate that.
I'm so sorry.
Okay, so this feels like a good time to go ahead and present my best friend of 20 years with his early birthday present, because this is where I actually got
gonna
the
flash him?
comics. I'm going to flash him.
Drop trout.
Yeah.
Yay.
All right, there's a box. For those listening,
Go
there's
ahead
a
and
box. It's
open this up.
a brown box.
My birthday was in February. I don't know.
Oh, I actually do have a.
Mine
I have a
is
birthday
2
present for you too.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, whenever we're done.
He's opening the box. His face is lighting up like a child on Christmas morning.
That always happens.
We're on camera.
I'm turning red.
I'm turning red. Am I turning red?
Oh wow.
And it's a huge dildo.
Your
Red and yellow.
favorite.
Great,
Happens
thank
to have
you.
wings on.
It's
That's an interesting position to be running in.
it's a Slash 75th anniversary celebration thing. So you can catch up on your Flash reading. It's a cool little tome, I thought, and I figured it'd serve 2 purposes. One, you love Flash, it's your birthday, so I thought I'd get you that, and then 2, I could use it for this show. So while it is yours, I'm going to probably be borrowing it a lot over the next few months.
No.
Not a chance.
Not at all.
This is excellent. Awesome. Thank you.
Cool.
I
Okay.
have 75 years of reading to catch up on.
You do. Not all 75 years are in
yeah,
there.
more like 73.
Okay.
You have to stop playing.
So, let's see. Then there was so there's Flash Comics, and there was All Flash, which is actually Flash's solo title. It was quarterly at first, and then turned into a bi-monthly comic that lasted 32 issues. And then he had regular appearances in Comic Cavalcade and All Star Comics, but those are more Justice Society books. So if we ever do a splash on the Justice Society, then we'll talk about those more. But we're not really going to get into All Star Comics or Comics Cavalcade too much, or else we'd be here forever. Okay, so jumping in, Flash Comics #1, cover dated January 1940, but it was actually released in 1939. Kaleb, is this something? Do you know why they released the comics 2 months before their actual cover date? Is that something like it's something I kept meaning to look up?
No,
but
I don't know.
I've bought comics for years and I've never understood that.
It actually always makes me a little mad because, like, sometimes when you go there and you don't know, like, you're not
sure which issue, right?
We
exactly.
all have the list of which you own.
Pull list.
You don't have it. You don't know which one. Yeah. I don't know why they do that.
That wouldn't have anything to do just with circulation and how hard it was.
Yeah, printing and circulation back then.
Yeah,
right,
but
they would
tradition,
keep doing it.
I guess
just
you can't
You
double
can't
up.
change the dates because then you really wouldn't know which one you're on.
And y'all say y'all have no purpose here. You just answered a question.
No, well, we didn't answer the question.
We read comics.
We theorized about the answer to a question.
Yeah, I could be bullshit.
And if what you're saying is that comic books take away your common sense and ability to do deductive reasoning, then we should stop doing the podcast now.
No, I'm good.
But yeah, I mean, circulation and news printing and
especially
things
back in
like
the day.
that
Interesting. Okay.
took so long to get where they needed to go. You didn't have overnight shipping to the entire U.S. So by the time they got there, it was probably 2 months later.
Right. Okay, that's fair enough. All right, so the Flash Comics #1 in the Overstreet Price Guide, which I brought here, this giant book right here, if anybody is curious, lists Flash Comics #1 in near mint condition as selling or being worth $180,000.
Oh my God!
Change.
Well, yeah, because
It's
Superman
just-
just sold for $3.2 million.
Correct.
Action
Yes,
Comics #1. Yes.
Yes, it was
it's
the highest one ever, right?
The only
Was it
one
highest
in
grade?
existence that is known about is Action Comics. It's a 9.6. And it's an action comic. This is, I think,
unbelievable.
This Flash comic is actually from the same collection that Action Comics is from. The one that's sold.
This is how geeky Chase is. When we were going to Comic-Con, he watched that sale on eBay like every hour. He was just watching.
I just wanted to know.
Well,
in
and
Chicago
let me put this into a different context though. But I collect records, and everybody they're like, "Oh man, I found this original Beatles 45. I'm going to save it and like put my kids through college on it." And I'm just like, "No, you're not actually. That's worth $75." And like I'm constantly like busting people's bubbles about like oh man, well if you get a Butcher album, but that's a little known Beatles album weirdness. Sorry, this is not about rock and roll nerdism. This is about comic book nerdism. But even the Butcher album is worth $5,000 or $6,000. Like we're talking about the most rare, expensive, sought after albums are $10,000, and like that it absolutely blows my mind. I mean, you can get the rarest Elvis or rarest Beatles album of all time, and you're talking about less than $10,000.
Wow.
And these comics that are 10, maybe 20 years older. I mean, it's not like the time difference is the big difference.
Right.
The Beatles albums aren't going to be worth, $100,000 in 10 years.
Right.
But the comics are so much more sought after, apparently.
Well, okay.
Or
so
you guys are so much more bigger fans. I don't know what it is, but that's a massive jump.
there is a big difference because, especially with Golden Age comics, because you have to remember there was a recall on paper.
On paper, yep.
During World War II. So a lot of comics, like people sent their comics back in to be pulped,
Yeah.
and so there's so few Golden Age comics in good condition.
So that means someone probably wiped their ass with a Superman.
Right, a
#1.
Superman #1.
Yeah,
it
I
got
mean,
it got pulped down, yeah.
Probably been like a Kleenex.
Wow.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And on top of that, but like if you buy one of these comics from the original owner, it's because they're a bad patriot. Like they're a bad American. like, oh yeah, you guys need toilet paper and bullets?
Purchased it. They might have purchased it. They might not have owned it. They might
No,
not
that's
have
what I mean.
known it
The
was the bad
original
patriot.
owners are bad Americans.
Right, yeah.
Or they were just kids that didn't want to lose their color.
No, I don't blame them
Ask
one
the
bit.
government, they're bad.
Yeah. No, I'm no warmonger. I'm just saying.
Just saying.
So that was the 180,000 is what I said Overstreet priced it as being valued. There was actually that was for a 9.2, which comics are on a 10-point grading scale. A 9.6, which is what I was talking about, is the Flash Comics #1 from that collection. There was a 9.6 from that collection that sold for $450,000.
Now we're getting there.
Yeah. So
I know what I'm buying when I get into my DeLorean next time.
right. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Pick me up in Action Comics #1, would you?
No problem.
5 of them. Right.
Please.
Yeah.
You like
And
flame
be
through
a- and-
all the rest of the factories and shit. Like,
Please be a bad patriot. Okay.
come back to villain. Like,
So,
Drawn
just as a
after you.
warning to anybody who actually wants to buy Flash Comics #1 in their future, maybe two of you, there is a famous first edition series that DC released where there was a special cover on the outside that said big, huge letters, famous first edition. But the problem was that the inside cover was exactly the same as Flash Comics #1. Same thing with, I think, Sensation #1 and Action Comics #1. All you had to do was take off that outside cover, and you essentially have what appears to be a mint condition Flash Comics #1, although the size was slightly different. But still,
Yeah, the sizing was off.
there's been a lot of times where people have sold those claiming they were original, and those were released in the 70s.
wow.
Like, just open up the cover and look.
Copyright.
I was about to say it's got to be different paper. I mean, I guess they weren't
guess,
to
but if you've never-
glossy paper yet.
But if you've
you
no,
know?
in the 70s
Even in
they
the
were still
70s,
yeah,
yeah.
it was still pulp.
Yeah.
They didn't hit 7. I mean, Glossy wasn't until
Gloss-
what, like late 80s, 90s?
No, not even. Glossy wasn't until 2000s, I don't think, because my comics from the 90s are still
I got a
like
couple of
paper.
Glosses.
Yeah, I guess
They're
you're
trade
right,
paperbacks that I'm thinking of.
Yeah,
Even
right,
still,
there's
you wouldn't want to
difference.
pull it out of the bag because you just paid how much money for it?
And not only that, but who's right, exactly. Who's going to open their Flash Comics #1 after they just paid that much money for it?
Yeah.
And two, it's not like you've seen other ones to reference it to.
Yeah.
Right.
Unless you just really knew everything about it, you wouldn't know.
Yeah, if I'm going to spend $400,000
Sure.
on something, I'm going to know everything about
Fair
it.
Just
enough.
not show anybody and just tell yourself it's real.
yeah.
No one knows I have.
But I think it was kind of one of those soft sale things where somebody was selling that for $1,000, let's say. And so a comic collector walks by a comic table and sees that somebody's selling Flash Comics #1 for $1,000. They know it's worth $100,000, and then that sort of. I think it was that kind of scam. Okay, so let's jump into the origin of the Flash. Like we said, Jay Garrick is a science researcher. He gained amazing speed after inhaling the vapors of hard water and donned a costume featuring a winged helmet inspired by the god Mercury.
Looks like a spaghetti strainer.
As beginning.
It's like you got a hat, a red T-shirt, and some blue jeans, and decided to be a superhero.
Yeah, the blue jeans
Right.
part I think is the funniest thing.
and
yeah.
the
They were acid wash.
the shirt
way ahead
was
of his
his.
I
Must
need
have
to know
on
the
his-
story on this costume.
He went to the 80s and
Okay.
back.
So
I
this.
just like that it's tucked in.
The story of this costume is that they didn't really have stories for costumes back then. They just kind of appeared in them. But later retconned, the shirt is a football uniform, like 40s football like sweater.
Right.
It is, I believe, jeans
Durable.
or some sort of slack. And then the winged helmet is his father's. And I don't know. I guess he added the wings because I don't think World War I's.
Yeah.
No wings on the
That's
helmet.
No.
You wear
No,
blue
it's not a
jeans,
thing.
but you've managed to find boots with wings.
Right.
But-
Yeah. Well,
Well, and in
Do
all
you
fairness,
think-
we don't know they were
Created it.
blue jeans. They just look comedically like blue jeans.
like blue
right?
jeans.
Yeah.
I know.
Only
blue
have
pants.
about
I mean,
three
at least he
colors.
didn't
There's
go the
a
whole,
contrast.
Oh, that's true. And actually,
put on some glasses, become a newspaper writer, and all of a sudden you didn't recognize
Wait,
him.
that would be
Yeah,
a
yeah,
terrible,
yeah.
like most
Okay.
terrible
We'll get to
story
that.
ever.
Don't
Don't
even
even
get
get
to
to
that
that
Start.
Don't you dare.
There's an entire episode on the
I'm sorry, I
glasses.
just had to start shit.
Yeah.
That was the whole point of that. That was.
Go back in time and take
down,
it
boy,
back.
down.
Oh man.
Go run backwards and take
At
it
least
back.
Flash isn't broken.
So, the first Flash story is a story where he fights the at Fearsome Four, whatever. I just read it, but it was so generic.
Faultless
The
Four.
Faultless Four, Faultless Four, who essentially just want to steal an atomic bomber from a character that we meet, Joan Williams' father. Joan Williams is Jay Garrick's Lois Lane, his love interest. But something different about her was that at the end of this comic, she reveals he reveals his secret identity to her.
Yeah, that's that doesn't happen.
Yeah,
that's
that's
not
not a-
very common that a superhero,
Right.
just lets it all hang out.
Although
He's not wearing a mask.
he vibrates his face
Yeah, I
at
was
such a
gonna say
speed that
Yeah,
you
he does.
can't see
Which era did they come up with that crap in?
the 40s.
So that was a golden era.
That was a golden
thing,
age.
but the reason that you can't recognize him is because he vibrates
He
his face.
vibrates his face, so you can't get a good look at it.
It's hard to say vibrates his
Hey.
face. Like, really.
Hey, I'm sure Joan really appreciated face vibration.
I wouldn't
I
be
mean,
mad
dude,
at
she
him.
was a total bitch, man.
I wouldn't kick him out of bed for eating crackers. All I'm saying.
Crackers would go
wonder
everywhere
what his-
though, if he's vibrating his face. Just
Look, nerd.
like a sawdust
It's not
like,
right.
yeah, you, boom.
Something else I found weird about the first one was he was told by the doctors that he had this
Okay.
condition. It wasn't like he went out and just like discovered it, which is kind of weird. In like,
Well, actually, it wasn't even told by the doctors. The doctors told somebody else
Yeah,
that
some
he has
random
this
dude. Yeah, it
some
was some,
random
like,
guy.
random guy
I don't know.
was
This
there.
hard water vapor, as you know,
That hard
does
water,
this
right.
to human people.
yeah,
you
he
know,
just like he runs a test, and like
Right.
the same day he's like, yeah, dude, hard water.
there's a panel in it where the nurse. Jay Garrick's metabolism is speeding up to the point where he has to constantly eat, and he's like, I love this food, this hospital food or whatever. And then the nurse just says, "You'll eat slop and you'll like it," and it's never referenced again. She's just like, yeah, it's just like you'll like it.
I just said I liked it, ma'am.
Right, yeah. There's
And
no
I'll eat a
reason-
lot of it.
You don't have to be mean about it. It's just-
Well,
it's
he
like
was
you're
vibrating
right.
his face. Probably she didn't know what he was
I
saying.
don't know if he had learned.
Maybe
face
this is just
vibration.
a 1940s theme that the women all suck a lot.
I don't know. I think,
Are they all really mean?
No, I think the 1940s Lois Lane was very like go getter and
She was kind of a
Clark's-
1980s woman in the 1940s.
right. Clark's equal, and actually I think Joan becomes that too because she's actually a scientist as well.
Mm-hmm.
She's not just some housewife, or whatever. She's and which I was thinking about because women had to join the workforce at that point, right?
Well,
maybe
that's a
not yet.
little that's a little early,
yeah,
but yeah, certainly by 41, 42. 42, 43, 44, 45. Yeah, 42. We were in the
take
war
off your
for
shoes.
sorry, I had to think of when Pearl Harbor was. But yeah, certainly by 42 that was a thing. So it wasn't that far after that. Her being a scientist in 1940 is
But
a
yeah,
nice,
women
nice
sort of
touch,
being
though.
the damsel in distress wasn't really highlighted from my reading until like the Silver Age.
Mm-hmm.
Like men and women were sort of in danger just as much as each other. The Silver Age is really like, oh my God, marry me and save me, and
Yeah.
all the time.
Marry me and save me.
So, and maybe that was a reaction to women wanting to be more independent and the male writers not liking it, so trying to more put it in their place.
Yeah, sure,
There's a
absolutely.
Hawkman comic that Hawk Girl it's actually Shiara. She's not Hawk Girl yet, but she dresses up as the female Hawkman and says something like, people might come after me just like they come after you, Hawkman, and I haven't even helped you. And he's like, yeah, and don't get any ideas about helping me because you're not good enough, and just call us winged men. Blatant,
Damn.
like, yeah.
Damn. Yeah, no, but there was something that happened in the 50s socially about that they women rushed into the workforce, saved the day when the men were all out fighting, and then the
everybody
men
get back to
the
work.
men came back and were like, "Thanks so much for keeping my seat warm. I'm
your
gonna need that
pearls.
job back.
Here's your vacuum
Yeah, but
cleaner.
the whole of the 50s was spent trying to reestablish that social order,
Right.
and because it was post-war, everybody was very happy to let that happen, and then it took a full decade before the 60s, and that female uprising.
Right.
We don't speak of those times.
So,
Isn't that when like Veronica started wanting to become a news anchor?
Right.
In Archie.
Right. In Archie.
talking about in Archie?
Archie, the perfect comic to just really grasp a hold of social commentary.
So, like I said, Flash Comics #1 actually also featured Hawkman. So we'll move on to Flash Comics #2. Flash is not on the cover on this one. Hawkman is. But in this story, Jay and Joan team up to take on Lord Donnellan and his partner Ghoul. That's all I have about that issue. I don't really know. So, like we mentioned earlier, Flash is not actually on Flash Comics #3, 4, 5, and 7. I also have no info about those issues. It's actually really difficult to find information about Jay Garrick in the Golden Age. Like, there's a lot about him as a character, but specifically in the early Golden Age, like, just seems like nobody's read it.
Right.
Yeah. Flash Comics #6. This is the first time you actually see on the cover that a DC publication is on the cover. Sort of first time establishing, like, hey, it's DC, and Flash is back on the cover. This is June 1940. Then we move to Flash Comics #8, and the cover has a completely new layout. And before, it had featured 4 or 5 characters that will be in this issue, and now it's just Flash and just Hawkman going back and forth on the covers as we move forward. No, I don't think any other hero ever is on without one of them. It's always either Flash or Hawkman, and most of the time both, one just smaller in the corner. All right, that was Clay kissing me goodbye. you can say you're leaving.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's not a...
I gotta go see a rock and roll show. I'm really sorry, but I'm running up on time.
It's cool. It's quite all right.
We're sponsored
Who's
gonna do the
playing at the
sponsor?
Spanish Moon. This show has been sponsored by Complete Media Group, your one-stop shop for photography, videography, DJ, photo booth, and lighting services. Everything your special event needs. I'm out, bitches.
Boom! He did it perfect. We can just use that in every other one. Right.
Never invite him back.
Okay, then move to Flash Comics #12. I'm actually sad that Clay left because I thought we could talk about this part, but this is the only Flash Comics cover I could see as a reference to war, which the Flash is actually taking away the soldiers' guns. So I thought that was kind of interesting. At this point, in the summer of 1941, the All Flash Quarterly starts. The Overstreet Price Guide has it priced at $14,875 for a 9.1 near mint 9.1 or 9.0, excuse me. Yeah, almost 15,000 on eBay right now. A 9.1 is on sale for $15,500. So if anybody wants to buy one, it's currently on
is
sale.
that like buy ready? You know, like
Yeah, you can buy it right now, free shipping.
How does eBay
For
run?
15
Is there a reserve?
What is the scale based on? Like, how do you?
What is the scale based on? yours?
the 1 to 10
Oh,
scale.
it's
What's the name of the
meaning.
group?
Oh,
Pages
well,
big.
there's two major graders. There's CGC,
CGC is the
and
the big one. I think.
yeah, there's another one that.
Two words that
Well, say louder things. Do you want to move to a mic now? Sean, you can move to a mic. Okay, he's good.
I think Sean's question was,
say his
how do they
name.
rate comic books the
Well,
way that they do?
it's essentially every comic book starts at a 10, and then every imperfection they find in that comic book knocks it down 1/10 of a point. Is the very simplified way of saying it, but essentially, like
Corners, Chris.
Corners being bit,
crease,
yeah.
acid.
You don't have
stains,
right.
Dog
You really,
hair.
one of the first things they're going to look at is they're going to look for watermarks, and then they're going to look at those 4 corners to see how crisp they are.
Yeah. What you got?
You want a paper cut.
This was just kind of off topic too, but the Superman that sold not long ago, what was that?
Action Comics #1.
It was a
Like, what's it?
9.5.
It was a
9.6.
9.6.
Okay.
Highest graded one.
Yeah, I think the next highest graded one in existence that we know about is a 6.5 or something.
Wow.
Like that. Yeah.
It had
so
been in
it's
snowy climates and a cedar chest for, 25 years or
no,
something?
probably longer. Probably
It's probably
35 years.
It better have come with that cedar chest.
And that house.
Yeah, I was going to say they just gave
Nicolas
us the house.
Cage actually owned it at one point.
Really?
Yeah,
The
he's
cedar
a
chest
big
or
time
that?
suit.
Oh,
Nicolas
God,
Cage. is a
how'd it
huge
sell
cedar
for that
chest.
much?
Quite a chest. It's like the.
Nicolas
That
Cage had his own island.
That
Did he
should have
steal
made it a
it?
6.5 right there.
Wardrobe. Like no telling what's coming out of that thing.
Do you remember the '90s? Everyone loved Nicolas Cage.
Because he
And Mel Gibson.
No,
How's that
not
turned
everyone.
out?
Oh, how we've turned.
No, right? Yeah.
Oh,
I
how
still
the
love Braveheart.
turntables.
All right. How the turntables? What? Braveheart's amazing.
Okay.
Go.
This ran a little bit long. I gotta go.
You gotta go.
Yeah, dude, I didn't think.
Yeah, I did. I mean,
Really didn't. You know?
yeah.
I'm gonna sign off on the big man's
Hour
mic.
Hour and
Man,
2
we might
minutes.
have to make this a two-parter.
Yeah, that's probably the best idea.
Flash is worth a 2-part.
Yeah.
Just the gold, because there's already going to be a Silver Age, and I think. All right, well, I guess we're going to have to make this a two-parter and try and be more concise next time.
That works.
Well,
I'll study next time. Okay?
Yeah.
True.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, we
got
didn't
it.
get started until like
We
what,
have a
7?
we have a little bit better of an idea how we're going to do this. This was the first one. What?
you all stopping now too?
Well, yeah. I mean, we're still
Yeah.
recording.
Sign
We're
off.
going to say bye and do all this whole thing.
Do it with one light. Man.
Make it real sketchy in here.
Clay already plugged complete media group.
Right. Well,
I've got a
You don't need my gear?
default face out in the car.
Come on, keep talking. Why'd you stop? We were doing it's the overtrack.
The closing.
oh, this is
sound.
the closing. Okay, so apparently we have closing music.
Splash signing out.
Copyrights.
gotta go to the high note.
Just gonna start playing ocarina.
Jump, jump,
Sponsored by whoever wrote that song.
So those of you who have bothered to continue listening, which I'm sure most of y'all shut it off 30 minutes ago, thank you for listening to episode 2 of Comic Book Variant, the podcast where we give you the same comic book related info you could get anywhere else, just with a different cover. Follow us on Twitter at CBVariant, or follow us on Instagram, Comic Book Variant, or search us on Facebook. Just search Comic Book Variant. You can call 225-443-0228 and just leave us any random voicemail you might like about the stuff we talked about today, or just pretty much anything. We'll play it on the air if it's good. And yeah, I hope you join us next time. Our next episode will probably not be about The Flash. We'll finish this up at some point later on down the line, sometime this year, because that's its 75th anniversary. I also think we're going to be having a splash on Catwoman soon. Yep, so we'll have that. And then next year we can look forward to Wonder Woman, because that'll be her 75th anniversry. So we'll do
Getting
that one.
old.
And then we should also celebrate the Flash's 76th anniversary.
Right? Yeah,
Because we'll
by the speed
We'll
we're
be
going.
finished with filming this one.
We did not do the
We're taping
Flash
this one.
episode very fast. All right, well, thank you for joining us. We love you, all the 2 listeners that are probably listening to this, me being one of them. Good night. Thanks for watching this episode of Comic Book Variant. Be sure to subscribe to our channel by clicking here. If you want to see more of our videos, you can click here on the fight. And if you liked the music in this video, you can click here to see the whole music video. You've been watching Comic Book Variant. We're the podcast where you get the same comic book related info you could get anywhere else, just with a different cover. I'm Chase Lee. Thanks for watching CBV. You son of a